I want to go back to number 2 for a sec on how we choose the reviewers.
Yeah.
Because I think if we can think of a good way of filtering them somehow, or finding the people that we can trust. So how do we find people that we can trust that are doing it for the right reasons? Do you have any
Yeah,
any
that's what I
general
was
idea of how
going
we
to get
start with
to
that?
now. Because the main problem is that what needs to be saved essentially is the academia somehow, because the people who will always be the most capable people, and also like people who with the highest authority, like naturally assumed authority that people would let them do it, would be of course educated intellectuals, academicians. The problem is that much like the lower levels of education, academia is also fundamentally broken, and that's why you also get a fundamentally dysfunctional skeptical movement, which is also a big
Right.
part of what should be helping but isn't. Because if you want to somehow, because whatever system you have, you somehow have to determine what of the things, which of the things are actually dangerous and should be limited, and in what ways, and which of the things are the opposite of that, just free, stimulating discussion and debate of things that are controversial, but that's necessary and vital for democracy and advance in sciences and social issues. So if you have a fundamentally broken academia and skeptical movement, then that's a problem, because the people who will be doing the policy, doing the reviewing, and doing the expert opinions that the policies are based on, will give you just bad opinions that will result in disaster. So they will be doing the opposite of what you want them to do. And well, there are causes. There are very specific causes to some of the, I guess, at least to the degree of the problem in academia. And one of them is that there actually is an interference with academia, especially in the English-speaking world, from the side of the intelligence agencies. Because there are some, again, questions that they want to control, and they can't necessarily, like before the internet they definitely couldn't, now maybe to some extent, but they can't like control what everybody's doing or thinking or saying. But academia are a few people, elite people. Maybe if you infiltrate that, you don't need like a high number of operatives to be able to clamp down on it. Just like they infiltrated the, especially like the reporters on like foreign affairs type
Okay.
positions in mainstream media. That's like, yeah, like somebody would try to argue, no, that's definitely not happening. But it's like, what else are the intelligence agencies even doing then? That's
Mm.
their job. Like in a sense, like I completely understand like that they would be doing it because they kind of have to be doing that if they want to be
Right.
exist and be themselves.
Right.
So
Right.
that's part
Well,
of the
in my
problem.
mind, just to make a comment, I think in order to combat the intelligence agencies to some extent, you have to almost convert them into realizing that we all want a better world. Even the intelligence agencies, their cores, I have to believe that they're trying to do their best to keep society stable, to
Yeah,
keep from losing power and having anarchy everywhere, right?
that's
That's
the thing.
that's I think,
It's
the
fun
core
that you
mission.
say that. Funny that you say that because where I was going with the whole thing is that with the
Yeah.
skeptics is like, yeah, I think they're like fundamentally flawed, like the skeptical organizations and what they're doing and how, and they're not as good, nearly as good at critical thinking as they think they are. That's can be demonstrated, which is why I like, even with the book like mine, it's like part of it is like to provoke them, but not provoke them into like then just fight with them, but or just be ignored, to provoke them into actually starting to discuss things with you. But from the
Right.
position of like, because as long as they have a list of things that are bad and they just will just mock the people who do them and nothing else, and they
Right.
will just be so incurious to the extent that they would just never research in any of those directions, then even if it's about things that may be ultimately irrelevant, like cryptozoology, like whether there's Bigfoot in the forest, it's just like
Yeah.
it's an example case. It's like if they would be able to be open-minded, like but scientifically skeptical and all that, but like literally like scientific about it, but while skeptical, then that shows that they can be that way about anything, like about
Right.
all the things that matter. So if you sort of make a breakthrough to them in some of these areas, it should make them like the sort of transform them personally in the positive direction that will be applicable to
Yeah.
everywhere else, because they can't then just like limit their now actual open-mindedness to just one of the fields. They will have to reconsider, reevaluate. Like with the UFOs now, like suddenly it's become, for whatever reason, now in the media and intelligence agencies are much more fine with admitting that they are here. So, but that's the thing. But the skeptics are like the last vestige of complete, just scathing incredulity. still. Like nothing that has been released or happened has moved any of them, pretty much.
Right.
Like the one person who was moved was the Avi Loeb, who was previously much more skeptical astrophysicist, like an example of how it looks when it works right. That he was previously not curious about the subject because he thought really it's nothing to it, but when evidence changed, then he adapted to the new evidence and now suddenly understood the implications of it maybe being true, and so set up a research program to actually make sure if it is that way or not, because that's a rational response. So there was a little bit of a breakthrough. There was like these sort of events can create a little bit of a breakthrough. Yeah. So astrology is another example where you could have like a debate started and then actually nudge the skeptics toward actual critical thinking, and then which then has to be because of the topics that are censored as fake news on the internet, the whole time one of the topics is UFOs. And anything alien related that is very early, like as thoroughly as all of the other ones, like conspiracy theories. Because it's on the list of bad theories. It's a list on the conspiracy theories, and always was. But the thing is, it's harmless. Like whatever reasons you have why something should be banned out of the off of the internet is usually like sexually explicit, violent content, like making people like what do you call it, stirring violence, like doing stuff that actually will cause negative repercussions for the society. The whole UFO thing is essentially just fun. It's like there's been like one example that's borderline of like one cult, the Heaven's Gate cult, where they wanted to fly with the UFOs on the comet. And even among cults, there was like the one cult where some people analyzing it would say, who like covered all the cults, like I think I've already mentioned it, would say like, but these were like really nice people. And like the people who died were like really just wanted to. And anybody who didn't want to could leave. Which is like never happened in any of the other cults. So even like the craziest, like the worst consequence type of delusion in this field was still the nicest and possible least problematic cult that you can have. That's still a suicide cult. So and that's one example. And there's been like nothing else ever. The only people who were like died in relation to the topic were some of the researchers of the stuff. So that's just like the part of the conspiracy of it, like maybe there wasn't just accidents or just like so it's not like dangerous to like they are not the UFO people are not being dangerous to other people. That's not how that works. So it was just like partially by inertia, partially you could say maybe there's some actual like cover-up conspiracy element to it now that we know that UFOs exist. Who knows, maybe there was intelligence agencies doing something. So because at least like because there's one definitely plausible involvement of them in why they would bother to do stuff about it is like it's a good kind of misinformation to cover their own projects that they want to stay secret. They would just like mask it as UFOs and then say that but anybody who believes in UFOs is crazy anyway. So but the whole time it could have been their like prototype of a new jet or something, but they use it as cover.
That's possible for sure.
So like what I'm trying to say is that like yes, for the people in the spearhead of the correcting the fake news will always have to be academia and especially skeptics, and so you need to reach out to them and effectively change their mind on what they're doing right now, because what they're doing right now is not being critical enough of themselves.
So if you were to start, say you had a certain amount of money, say you had a rich guy in your back pocket, Bill Gates or whoever, that decided that he wanted to get rid of fake news, maybe just anyone like that.
Yeah.
And he's got a certain amount of money. He wants to start hiring people, choosing people. Can you think of a good place to start if you had to just pick one guy who would be the most honest, the best skeptic, the best person? What kind of interview process would you kind of go through, or what kind of thought process would you go through to pick these people? Well, specifically,
that's the thing. The issue isn't that, like, I know I could essentially evaluate people for the abilities, but the problem is that's not a scalable solution. Unless I would be able to train or somehow create some sort of scenario in which people would arise like that who would also be guaranteed to have certain abilities that will be needed. Because you could have a system where somebody is essentially reviewing individual people, whether they should be involved or not, and like be able to judge the character attributes that are necessary. Because you've had projects like that, even like in war, like in intelligence agencies. Because that's another thing. In intelligence agencies, you can definitely reach out to the good guys in intelligence agencies, because they're factions within the agencies with different intentions. And there's always like a black ops faction that's really up to no good. But then there's also we just want to really protect and help faction in intelligence agencies. So you can also, like, if you wanted to have an effect, then you could also try to reach out to those people and help them win their faction struggles to be the dominant faction. Within they wouldn't be the only one. There will always be Black Ops people or like super dark project. But that's the thing. So you can have a people in like of these kinds, because like intelligence operatives or like people like analysts, let's say intelligence analysts and skeptics and certain academicians are the target people for this kind of thing. So you could definitely have like a definite criteria of like where to recruit from. Like the qualification, that's base, but that's again, the technical expertise is the basic qualification. The real qualification is always the character one. And that's something that there are some ways how to structure interviews that are more interesting that intelligence agencies would do. Because intelligence agencies, they are allowed, unlike most normal employers, even to like employ deception in their interview process, so they can actually test people. So they would be doing stuff like observe them for a period of time, even after like telling them that they were not selected, and then just like observing them for a year, what they're doing after that, and then maybe saying, oh no, really, we do want to hire you actually. If they like prove themselves, like once they think it's done, if they start, maybe if they were pretending before, they stop pretending, and you will see that they're actually shady people. So there's like approaches. You can also set up a test that again appears like a test of one thing, but really it's a test of something else. That's you can definitely do, and that's in again, it always goes back to the aliens. In Men in Black, the hiring process in Men in Black. Do you remember it in the movie?
Which one?
For the first Men in Black.
Yes. Yeah, I do remember Men in Black. Yeah.
Yeah. So how they were hiring him, and there was like a bunch of other like adepts, like probably military people, or like Navy, Army, or whatever, intelligence people. But the test, like on the surface of it, was like, questions, answer the questions, like, and I would assume that that's what that's about. But in reality, it was about like the situational awareness thing. Like there was this like nobody could actually write because it's it's literally impossible to fill those forms out. So the test was like the first person who would actually solve that problem. Was like what the test was about. There was a series of tests like this, or like shoot all the aliens, and so like they shot everybody, but he just waited and then shot the little girl at the end because that was actually the only dangerous one. Because like there were just others were like stretching or just like sneezing or something, so they were not dangerous. It doesn't matter that they look like monsters. What mattered was like, well, maybe it looks like a little girl, but it's like nuclear physics book at night in Bronx. Maybe that's a dangerous one. So that's like funny, but it's a demonstration of principle. So you can try to set up a more clever entry process, but it's just important in this case. You kind of have to be very secretive about it. So unlike most other entrance tests, you can't say like up front what it's really about. In
the search for truth, you have to be secretive.
Yeah.
It's kind of a little counterintuitive, but I think I agree with
because that's what intelligence people figured out, and they call themselves intelligence for a reason. Yeah. So that's how you actually do tests. Because what academia does for tests is not good enough. Because if you like... Anybody can essentially cheat their way through a test because maybe they have good memory, so they can memorize stuff and then pass the test. But first of all, that doesn't mean that they will be able to solve the kinds of problems that they need to be able to solve really. So the test is sort of nonsense on the face of it, on the surface level. Okay. But also, the test of that kind generally tests nothing important about the person because now they have Google, so why test memorizing stuff? It's like literally not important at all for anything now. You can have like a memory dysfunction, and just with the internet, you'd still be fine. So, so again, the test needs to be testing what actually matters, which in this case is more character than expertise. But expertise it's like you first check the expertise. That's the easy part. But then you also have to check the character, and that's essentially a lot of what a good HR. Because I technically work at Red Hat in HR team. That's like what good HR is trying to do. You don't assess just the technical capability. You must assess something like culture fit is what you would call it in a corporation maybe. Like a set of character attributes that are necessary, which could be, again, the combination of critical thinking, open-mindedness, but also integrity. Because if the people are like egotistical, then that's like a big red flag because they will have a good chance of making the issues about themselves and bringing in their biases. Doesn't matter if it's personal or political biases. They will be biases. That's wrong. That will create, will cause them to make essentially errors, like disqualify things that shouldn't have been disqualified, and being okay with things that they shouldn't have been okay with.
Right.
So you also have to screen for like obvious biases, like if they're like obvious religious bias or obvious political bias, because essentially what you
Yeah.
want is as neutral a person as possible, but still with integrity. That's a bit of a difficulty because many neutral people will be spineless,
Yeah.
and that's not good
That,
enough. So yes,
that,
you can
that,
set up this whole procedure.
okay, that makes sense. I think I've got some confidence that that could work if you had the right enough money and enough people and enough of a desire from society to find truth. Because I do believe that probably 99% of people believe that truth is good, right?
Well,
And they
maybe
might
not
only
99. Yeah, many do. Most do. Yes.
very yeah, like the vast majority of people, like unless you're a sociopath or psychopath, which
Yeah.
I believe is the vast minority of people would fall into those two categories. I
Yeah.
believe the vast majority
Few
are
percent.
let's just call it normal people. A couple percent that would fight against us, maybe that would try to abuse it. So if we can have good policies in place to find the bulk of the people that are searching for truth and that want truth, even if it's not the truth that they agree with or have heard in the past, even if it's different, as long as it's truth,